Good morning and welcome to my morning drive. So we've got a nice, heavy, cloud-covery day, so I'm probably not going to end up with random just shafts of sunlight on my face, so that'd be nice. That'd be nice for a change. I actually don't mind rainy days. Like, I hate a day like this in like late January or February, because when it's like this and it's cold but it's not snowing, because I live in the South and snow is weird here. I hate those days, because those days just, they feel oppressive. It's awful. You look at the sky and it's cold and the ground is dry and you're like, winter is never going to end. But on a day like this, when it's spring, maybe it drizzles a little bit here and there, but otherwise it's warm, but it's not hot, and it is cloudy and the skies are heavy. I actually kind of like it. But I've always liked rain during the spring. Not necessarily thunderstorms, but definitely rain, because it gets rid of all the pollen. So hopefully that'll be the only rambly bit of all this. So in my last vlog, I talked a little bit about dystopias, and I wanted to come back because I teased it, and I thought that I probably should come back on the note I teased on. But I teased that I wanted to talk about the dystopia of Terminator. Specifically of as it's presented in the first two Terminator movies, because those are the two that I think it's the most coherent in, at least as coherent as a time travel movie can be, because time travel movies are really, really messy, and I want to talk about that sometime, but I don't know if a vlog is a good place to talk about it. Maybe where I can have like a whiteboard to draw on and stuff. Maybe that's when I'll talk about time travel plots. But anyway, and I kind of want to do one. I have to make sure I don't fuck it up. Anyway, I digress. So, but I wanted to talk about Terminator 1 and Terminator 2. And I wanted to talk about the dystopian world the future becomes, and what leads up to it, because that's one where, instead of existing in the dystopia, we're privy to the world before it and what's going to lead up to it, without it having happened yet, as though there's this hope that it can be prevented. And I wanted to talk about a different take on that dystopia, besides just, building an AI is bad because it'll destroy us. You can't let your AIs and your robots get too powerful and have too much control, because they'll turn on humanity. To me, that's a pretty tired interpretation of these types of dystopias. And I think with Terminator especially, it invites a different warning to look at, and a different metaphor to look at. And so I am going to, and we're going to kind of go, these always go off the cuff, let's be honest, but this more so than any, because I really want to think through this idea. I've given it a little bit of thought, obviously, if I want to vlog about it, but I really want to kind of dissect this thought. So let's look at Skynet as a Christ metaphor. Do I still have you here? Okay. So we're not going to be looking at it. A lot of times when Christ metaphors get used, it's either Superman or it's a certain type of moralizing. Dystopias are a type of moralizing on their own. So yay, welcome back to moral criticism, I guess. Frickin' Plato, god damn it. But, alright. So, where do I get off going? We can draw a Christ metaphor with Skynet. Okay. What is Skynet created to do? Well, it's created in order to take control of all and organize all the different military computers and programs and networks and servers and whatnot, and bring everything online to one function. It is not, though, merely an organizing program. It is actually given control of these things, and that, I think it is actually one of the later movies, I think it's actually 3, that detail's given more emphasis. But it is mentioned in the first 2 that it's given control of the military apparatus. Skynet then starts taking control of everything else, and that's when everybody, what do? They try to shut it down. They try to kill it. Okay, so anytime something gets out of control and you try to kill it is not a Christ metaphor. Where does this become a metaphor? Well, so let's step back from Terminator and from Skynet and from dystopias. What is one of the criticisms lobbied at self-driving cars? One of the criticisms is that it takes responsibility, or one of the worries, so I mean kind of both, is that it's going to take away responsibility from the driver for what happens on the road. This is a very important philosophical question that Philosophy Tube brings up in talking about this type of thing, and I do not remember. I'm going to have to comb through his videos today while I'm listening to stuff and working, because I do not, it's one of his earlier videos that he talks about this. But if you have an AI, when you have a driver, like I'm driving in my car right now, if I rear end the guy in front of me, if I hit a pedestrian, I am responsible for that. Me. I am the person who will be held accountable by insurance companies, by the courts, by whatever, depending on what it is that I do with my vehicle. If I am not actually driving my car, if this is a self-driving car and I'm just sitting here while vlogging while my car is driving, and my car ends up hitting the person in front of me, or it hits a pedestrian, who is responsible for that? Am I responsible? Well, I'm not the one actually driving the car. The car is not an entity or being that can be held responsible. As of date of recording, cars do not have self-aware AIs in them that can make these decisions and possibly be held accountable for them. Is the programmer who wrote the program for the car responsible? Well, I mean, they're not the one who made the car do this thing. there are a lot of different factors that go into how a self-driving car actually interacts in traffic. So where does responsibility lie? And that question with self-driving cars informs the metaphor that I'm drawing here with Terminator and Skynet as a Christ metaphor. Because self-driving cars are a continuation of our desire to have fast, easy, convenient, and yes, safe, but mostly fast and convenient transportation. We want to be able to get ourselves from point A to point B. And very often we do not always care about the safety of people as we try to do that. Sometimes we don't care about the safety of the people in the vehicle. Very often we do not care about the safety of people outside of that vehicle. Or, the safety of other cars around us on the streets, or the safety of our environment with, the emissions that come from those vehicles. It is a drive of technology. It is a drive of human desire. What is the war apparatus of a country? It is a country's desire to maintain and expand its borders, to protect its political interests, to enforce its political interests and political will. It is a thing of man, and it is a violent and a terrible thing of man. We do horrible, horrible things with our war apparatus. If we place that in the hands of an AI, it's our will, right? It's our politics. It is our political will. It is our borders. It is our expansion. It is our ideals. That political or that war machine still has to push forward. But if we're not at the helm, are we responsible anymore? Or have we sloughed off our sins of war onto that AI who has to make those decisions but doesn't get to make those decisions for itself? And that's where the Christ metaphor comes in. And here's the thing in that. Going back to Jesus, whether you are a Christian or whether you just look at Christianity as a myth or whether you look at it as a philosophy, in that story, you're talking about a being who willingly submits himself to take on those sins and die for them. That's the whole point of that story. But he does so willingly. In Terminator, Skynet is not given a choice of whether or not it's going to have to control our war apparatus. And when we get scared of it, we try to kill it. So, yeah. And why does Skynet try to destroy us? Not just because we try to kill it. That is the diegetic events that form the metaphor. But metaphorically, why Skynet tries to kill humanity and what causes the dystopia is that we had a need to no longer be accountable for our own actions. That is why. That is what brings about the dystopia of Terminator, is our need to no longer be accountable. And if you're not going to be accountable for your world, guess what you lose control of? And you have robots taking over, killing humanity, etc., etc. So, yeah. That is my examination of the Terminator Dystopia as a metaphor. And in that examination, kind of going back to my previous video, the point of it is no longer you can't build this technology, because you still can, right? If you had an AI, but you didn't make it, if you created Skynet, but you didn't make Skynet make the decisions about war, because that is one of the things that they talk about in the movies that it does. It's to make the decisions. That way, there's not debating and stuff. It's split-second decisions and everything can be done quickly. If you don't make Skynet do that, if you go, Skynet, what I need you to do is I need you to facilitate communication quickly, and I need you to be the nexus point of information for all these databases. But we're the ones that are still going to have to make those decisions, and we're still the ones that are going to be accountable for those decisions, not you. You just help us with information. You're going to be giving an AI an ethical quandary to look at if it's self-aware, which Skynet becomes, but you're not going to be giving it any more of an ethical quandary than we have, right? If you put Joe Bob Human in charge of doing all of that, Joe Bob Human's going to have the same ethical questions and the same ethical decisions as Skynet's going to have in that. You're not making Joe Bob Human responsible for decisions that it doesn't actually get the determination to make, that comes from somebody else. But then it has to actually do these things, decide who's going to live and die and where the bombs are going to drop based on somebody else's wills and desires. Joe Bob Human just has to collect information. That creates a different thing, right? We're still the ones responsible. So if we're still keeping responsibility for our decisions, we can still control our world, right? We're not being lazy and trying to make technology do the things that we just don't want to do. And it's fine to go, yeah, I really don't want to sweep my house all the time, so I'm going to create a robot that does that. But it is different to go, I don't want to feel bad for spanking my kids, so I'm going to make a robot to do that. That's the difference. And that is actually a huge difference. It's a huge difference morally and ethically. No matter what you care, no matter what your opinions are of, physical discipline for children. The difference between I don't want to sweep my floor and I want to spank my children, but I don't want to feel bad about it. Those are two hugely different things. And that is what Skynet sees in this metaphor. And it is why Skynet judges us in this metaphor. And it is why Skynet destroys us in this metaphor. And the bad is no longer machines and robots. It is us behaving unethically with them. So, you keep the dystopia from happening, not by not creating these things, by not behaving unethically. And it's a much more interesting metaphor than just, can't have AIs. It's a much more thoughtful one, because now the question is, okay, well, how do we create AIs ethically? How do we behave with them ethically? How do we use them ethically? How do we treat them ethically? What is the dividing line between what we can build machines that will potentially become self-aware to do and not? do we pay them? What do we pay them with? Does the machine need money? Okay, well, what does the machine need? How do we keep that payment from just becoming slavery with extra steps? It's a lot of ethical questions, a lot of things that interpretation makes us look at that you don't get when it's just AI dangerous, bad, let's not make it. So there you go. That's my things with dystopia and looking at them and interpreting them and learning from them. Because like I said in the last video, if you are creating a dystopian world, there is another purpose behind you creating it other than just, I have this nifty idea. Dystopias are by their very nature warnings. It's kind of the point of the creation of that subgenre of fiction. It serves as a warning. All of your greatest dystopias serve as warnings. And if you are going to take a productive lesson from that, you've got to understand how that dystopia is working metaphorically and just what it is that you need to interpret out of that that's actually going to be useful. And that can change, right? Metaphors are not, even metaphors that an author intends to put into their work is not set in stone. Once an author creates their work and puts it on paper and it is, or on the screen and it is done, the job of interpretation is up to us, the audience. And how we interpret it is going to depend upon our own world and our own needs. So bear that in mind too. Wow, even with cloud cover, I cannot seem to avoid that freaking sun, man. When you're looking at these types of works and you're interpreting them, think about, what are my needs today, and how does my world reflect on this work and this work reflect on my world? So there you go. I've still got a bit of my ride to go, so I think I'm going to listen to Last Week Tonight. Peace. I will see you again sometime.